Electricast.
Study
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
The best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Stacy Heisey-Terrell. Stacy is a career ownership coach who helps professionals design careers that align with their values, strengths, and lifestyle goals. After decades in HR across industries from healthcare to energy, she experienced burnout, broken promises, and unexpected layoffs that so many face. Determined to take control, she built the balanced work life she once only imagined. Now she guides others to do the same. Through her coaching, Stacy empowers clients to step into their career 2.0, creating greater fulfillment, autonomy, and purpose. Based in the Philadelphia area with her husband and 4 teenage daughters, she also leads community service efforts through her church's food pantry. With an MS in organizational development and HR management, Stacy brings both expertise and heart to her work. She believes that while life can be messy, your career doesn't have to be. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, me too, because I've been looking forward to this conversation. We had a great coffee chat, and I was just like, yes, I'm so looking forward to having you on this show. In fact, we met through the Angel Tucci's Meet a Guest directory. I love Angel, which is cool. I love the fact that there was this directory that we were able to connect that way. And I really love that you reached out. And as I said, we got to talk a little bit about the podcast and we felt it would be a great fit. And I'm excited because it's for this June series of building an extraordinary life. And so I just want to get right into the questions with you.
Yeah, awesome.
Excellent. Okay. So you spent decades building a career in HR across some pretty demanding industries. And from the outside, that likely looks like success by every standard measure. But can you take us back to the moment where you realized that climbing the traditional career ladder was costing you something you weren't willing to keep paying and what that turning point looked like for you?
Yes. Well, and it took me a while to realize this, but looking back at those positions, I really think that I became a different type of person. I had to hide away pieces of my personality to fit into these roles. And the further up the ladder I got, the harder it was to repress me, my authentic self, to be this other person. And it was taking a toll, besides the traveling a lot and having small children at home and working long hours and sneaking in on weekends, when my family was busy. Besides those kind of normal demands, I think the wear and tear of not getting to really be myself or changing to fit into a corporate personality or the personality that was needed, that took its toll and was stressful and wearing.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially being in HR, because you're sitting in the middle of like like different entities, like the employee and the employer, and having to be able to balance that because, for me, just being a part of like a corporation and seeing how like I've been where HR has been, you know, not necessarily neutral, but they saw both sides
Yeah.
of the story. And then I've
Hmm.
seen where HR has been just like all employer sided and the employee
Hmm.
really had no
Hmm.
like I don't know if it's rights, but they didn't really feel like there was that support. So I can
Yeah.
imagine that that would have been hard too, especially like you said, you had to, I guess, like you said, you had to hide parts of who you were in order to be able to sit in that role, to fit that role. It's because
Right.
it's almost like you can't be anybody's friend in that role. It's almost like a friend
Right.
list role. Yeah. Right.
It
So
does
how,
feel like that. Yeah. Yeah. Or
yeah.
your advocacy, you've got to temper it or really tailor it to certain audiences. And so you couldn't maybe, I struggled with being, full throated advocate if I felt like we were making a bad decision or wanted to do something different. It was a nuanced dance always. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine. Well, in this, career choice, obviously, was there that a specific moment for you that something just shifted for you and you knew you had to do something different?
Yes. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about how often there are these little nudges that we get through our life, and we don't pay attention to them until something big happens. And so I think I was getting indications like, this probably isn't a long-term play. Like, you might want to think about something else. There's probably something more enjoyable for you. But I think I came to the full realization that, gosh, I really need to do something different. I was in a job interview with a person interviewing me that was quite a bit less experienced than me. And we were having trouble like connecting, and I didn't feel like the interview was going real well. And then at the end, he's like, I just have to be honest with you. I think you're super overqualified, and I wouldn't be comfortable having you work for me. And I was like, yeah, cool. Okay, awesome. And I hung up and I was like, yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. I need to do something else. And so I started exploring ways I could go out on my own and just chart my own path a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love, well, I mean, the honesty, at least he was honest and said, look, I don't feel like you're the fit here. And it's not because you're underqualified, it's because he really felt that you were overqualified. Sometimes I can feel like a little bit, not necessarily strange to hear, but sometimes we feel like, okay, is that really the answer? But you
Yeah.
instinctively knew that it was. So
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the things I love is the concept of career 2.0, because for
Yeah.
me, what that implies is that the first version isn't wrong. It wasn't wrong at all. It's just, it
Right.
wasn't the whole story. So how
Right.
do you define career 2.0 for the women you work with? And what makes it fundamentally different from simply changing jobs or industries?
Yes. Well, for my clients, we spend a lot of time talking about what are those skills, like the capital S skills that transcend job title and industry, maybe those things that we have really cultivated in our careers, maybe as far back as our school days that have really made us successful and that we've worked really hard to build expertise in. What are those things, and how could we reimagine them just in a different environment? So I think a lot of people think about a career pivot or career 2.0 as, oh, I've got to throw everything out and I'm starting at the bottom again. It's like, no, you've spent so much time, energy, money building those skills, getting that education, building those networks. How do we take that and and just turn it a little bit. What's a new environment, a different environment that may be more enjoyable, may unlock more of who you are and get you closer to your goals without throwing it all away, but really just embodying it a little more fully. So sometimes that can be really challenging because we tend to think of ourselves as our job titles or as our industries, but it can be a lot of fun. And I see in my clients' faces when they start thinking about, oh yeah, how would somebody in a totally different industry use somebody like me? What are other types of clients or customers could I work with? What other types of teams would benefit from what I bring to the table? And how would that empower me to hit my goals? So it's really kind of that step back out of the weeds to look at
Hmm.
those skills and
Yeah.
expertise.
Yeah. And it's funny that you were saying, like, something I think I had read somewhere, somebody had talked about, they were talking about people who may not necessarily fit that job description. And I've always believed this, and it's just because I've had a lot of experience around it, is that you don't necessarily have to have all of the accolades. Like a lot of the time, when they write, I would go after jobs that I don't have like, a
Right.
lot of these degrees that they want, but I
Uh-huh.
have jobs,
Uh-huh.
I have like history. So I would
Yeah.
use my history as being like, valuable because
Uh-huh.
it's in the trenches. But one of the things that I really loved was I actually did work with someone. This was a really long time ago, but I remember when we were living in South Florida and I was working for a title company for residential real estate.
Mhm.
And I remember I had been, put into this higher role, but I actually got an assistant. And this person came from the food industry. Now, she came from the food industry as a manager. So she already had those skill sets of, what is needed to make
Uh-huh.
something run efficiently. But what I really loved was her attitude. She came in, I don't know anything, but I'm willing to learn. And I think that to
Mhm.
me can actually go a lot further sometimes than somebody who looks great on paper but doesn't really
Mhm.
have the attitude that would fit in. And I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of that over your tenure in HR, seeing
Yeah.
the, different people coming in who have all the bells and whistles that have been noted in the job description. And yet someone comes
Right.
in and they might have like maybe 75% of that, but they have something else that the other person doesn't. And that's like the right attitude. So for me
Mhm.
personally, think that it doesn't, and it shouldn't always just lean on like person's education, all of that, because it doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to be
Yeah.
a right fit. One of the things you talked about too, I think, is like what a person brings is kind of like being that culture add. So, like, what kind of
Yeah.
culture are you bringing with you? Like, again, it goes with attitude, but also
Right.
skill sets. You could be changing industries. That's okay. It's like
Uh-huh.
what are you good at and what can you bring to that? And are you willing to learn and to say, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to like learn. And that to
Right.
me is so important. And so I have like a follow-up question about the career
Mhm.
2.0 and how that works because what I think a lot of the time women won't go after a job if they don't have like a certain, like even if it's maybe it's 85% to
Yeah.
100%
Uh-huh.
of what it
Uh-huh.
says, and yet a guy will go after it with like 75% and maybe a little bit below because there is
Right.
that. I feel that I don't know if it's the confidence, but it's just like, hey, I'm just gonna do it. I don't know where that
Mhm.
comes from, but do you find is the biggest misconception for women that they bring to this conversation when they first come to you?
Yeah, I think you're right on there, Leslie. I talk to so many women who are like, "But I have no experience doing that." I'm like, "Okay, but you know how to be a leader, you know how to manage a project or analyze data or interface with customer, whatever those things are. So why couldn't you do it in this new way or this new environment?" And it is a lot of that trepidation of, well, they're going to see through me. I've never dealt with these data sets, even though I've been doing this for years and years, or I've never led this type of team, even though I've led 100 teams. And there is some of that. I can't remember who said, I read a quote and the woman was giving advice and she said, "Oh, just channel your inner white guy," right? Like, who's just maybe overconfident. Like, you definitely have skills. You got to, step out in that confidence. And so some of this process, I think, is good for us to have those moments where we are reflective of our careers. What have we accomplished? Like, how would we categorize those accomplishments? And for a lot of people, when we think about it for a minute, it's like, oh, wow, I am pretty impressive. Like, I've gotten a lot of things done over the years. And going in with that confidence of, okay, I know what I bring to the table. And that takes some practice, but also some self-reflection. And I think for a lot of us, it's helpful to kind of pull the data, right? Like, well, what is what does my experience show? Where have I performed really well? Bring those instances forward. So that's the thing that's on your face and not the, "Well, I don't know anything about this yet," or "I haven't had this experience yet." And I see a lot of, so I work with folks who think about going into business ownership as an option. And for women especially, like, well, how would I even do that? I don't even know. How would I? I'm like, well, how do you think these men are doing it? You think every business owner is Elon Musk, right? So finding other examples and champions like, oh, I could be like her. Like, I could do that too. Also, I think gives you some of that confidence boost of, I have a role model I could emulate and borrow some of those characteristics as I tread into something brand new.
Yeah, and one of the things while you were talking, I was thinking about like values. Like, as I know help
Yeah.
your clients design their careers around values, around their strengths and lifestyle goals. And what strikes me about that word is design. It's just so, I mean, obviously, because this is building an extraordinary life. The name of my podcast is Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I feel like our life, when we're intentional, when we choose what we want, we are
Yes.
intentionally designing what we want. So for I guess my question would be for women
Yeah.
who maybe have spent years adapting themselves to a role, because like you said, you had to adapt to fit into the role that you had
Hmm.
decided to become your career. So where can someone begin to reconnect with what they actually value?
Yeah. Well, I think so. One of the exercises I do with my clients is really thinking about, what are your goals? Not the corporation or organization's goals. Maybe even sometimes putting your family aside for a moment. What are your goals? How do you define success? And a lot of times I'll get these like, well, I know I should feel like success is ABC, but for me, it's really XYZ. And I don't know how to bring my family into that or tell my friends or my employer, or how do I seek that? And so I think the first step is really being honest with yourself. What is success? What are those goals? And for some of us, it might be we're at a place in our life where maybe we want to trade a little the income that we've been chasing for some lifestyle, have a little more time, less travel, whatever those things are. Or it could be thinking about community impact or legacy and having the freedom to dream about some of those things, or income. I had one woman recently, we were doing this exercise and I said, "So what does success look like?" And she goes, "I just want to make a lot of money." I'm like, "Okay." Like, "Okay, great. Let's be honest about that. How do you do that?" She's like, "I think I have some idea." I'm like, "All right, let's put it on the table." So I think sometimes, especially for women, we cover up those desires, right? Or our definition of success. We're okay with kind of putting that on the back burner or shelving that. So being honest with yourself, where are you headed? And then figuring out, okay, well, what type of career, business, whatever that is, will enable you to do that? How can you design your career around helping you to those goals rather than vice versa, and changing your goals to fit, whatever the standard is? So it takes
Yeah.
a lot of
I love
bravery.
that.
Yeah, too. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
But can
Yeah,
be
I'm,
super liberating, right? To just be
oh, of
honest
course,
with yourself. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I think really what, in a nutshell, you've just been describing is like being okay with what you want rather than what you've been conditioned to want or to value,
Yes.
right? Because that's
Yes.
really it. We've been
Yeah.
conditioned our whole lives to, especially like the having it all idea
Right.
of like having the house and the spouse and I didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. The kids, the vacation homes, the cars, the
Yeah.
money.
Hmm.
That might be someone's dream and doesn't mean that they've been conditioned to want it, but that could be
Right.
someone's dream, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's your dream. So I love the fact that
Right.
you talk to them like, what is it that you want? And that I love the fact that she was able to say, I just want to make a lot of money. And I actually have some ideas around that. And you're like, okay. I think it's hard to say
Right.
sometimes though,
It
because you
is.
think like, oh, if I see that, am
Oh,
I
people are
first of
going to
all
judge me.
going to be
Yeah.
judged by it?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But obviously felt safe enough to say that to you. But it's that
Uh-huh.
saying it to someone like you sometimes is a lot easier than saying it to family members and friends who might say, well, that's being selfish. You never know. Like you just never
Right.
know. So I just
Right.
love the fact that she felt safe enough to say, this is really what I want. And you were like, okay, let's see what we can do to make that a
Let's
reality.
do
So
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
you probably have this experience too, where sometimes people, because you're a stranger, you've spent a few hours with them, you don't live with them, you haven't known them since they were 5, they can say they're a little more free to say things. So,
Hmm.
I think practicing with a coach, what are those things? How do I bring my husband into that, my kids, my parents, my coworkers, whatever, that my friend group, how do I bring them in? But having, she said that. I'm like, "Okay, awesome." She's like, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" I'm like, "No, we've been talking for 30 minutes. I don't know you." I'm like, "No, it's cool." Like, "Yeah, let's make it happen." But then others who are, like, ready to, I've chased the cars, the house, the paychecks, and I'm kinda tired. I wanna travel, or I wanna, have this experience or impact this type of person. How do I get to that? And will people think that I'm nuts if I give up this
Mm,
perfect job or change my perfect lifestyle? Like, how do I explain that? And I think it all really starts with, kind of unlocking some of that passion, that freedom to express what it is you really want. That ends up being magnetic, right? And people get excited when they see that I really am following my passion, or I really am fully putting my feet towards my goal and taking off towards what I want. People are
yeah.
happy to hear that. Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One of the things that you have experienced, which is something I've experienced multiple times, is burnout. Yeah, I mean, burnout's real, but it's
Yeah,
becoming so normalized. I think that people just often just say, "Oh, well, I'm just burning out." It's almost become like just a normalized existence, a way of living.
right,
I
right.
also feel like a lot of the time too, with the reason why a lot of time people are burning out is because they are pushing without taking care of themselves, without taking those, just taking time to actually allow for the downtime. It's not about slowing down your momentum, and it's not about stopping everything altogether. It's not about burning it all down, which a lot of people talk about burning everything down and starting over. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of that comes from that, right? Like just that
Yeah.
idea of, okay, first of all, I've been pushing, maybe the job is really stressful. And now they're trying to like figure something else out. And so
Mhm.
I know that there's always often a fear behind that, okay? Because I know, like, again, the burnout piece, I think that is real where we can burn ourselves out in the positions that we're in, whether it's corporate America, whether it's our own business, because then we become our own boss and we have to set the rules and we have to decide what it is that we're going to do and how
Uh-huh.
and when and all of that. And that can be even harder than being an employee because at
Yeah.
least with the employee's role, you know what your job description
Right.
is,
You've got
right?
you've got some lines to color in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So the starting over part, because again, if they are deciding they're going to leave a job or an industry or start their own business, what do you usually how do you usually help your clients start over, I guess, through that fear of starting over, like helping
Yeah.
them to not feel like there's like, because we're scared, we want to
Yeah.
succeed, but if you don't know what you don't know, it's like trial and error and you feel like you're failing. So how do you help them, I guess, rebuild the trust in themselves?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
not even just in their career path, but in themselves after, deciding that, oh, I'm going to change my job or I'm going to change the industry or I'm going to become a business owner and being able to step through that fear.
Yeah, that those are great questions. So we talk a lot about kind of this battered career syndrome, right? And so I think sometimes we get trapped in these patterns where it's like, oh my gosh, even though I'm changing environments, I'm playing the same role or the same stuff keeps happening to me. So, how do you break that cycle? And I find with my clients, like the first step really is to get super clear on the goals. What are the goals? And if those are really different than your current situation, then that's a different direction, right? It should feel different. So, how do you get clear about your goals? Keep those in front of you, but also combat some of that fear through education. So, how do we research, data mine the new situation or possible situations? How do we, maybe have a few different options to compare and contrast to know as best we can what are you getting into in that next role? And especially with business ownership, how do we find out what that is? Find experts to talk to. One of the coaches in our network, my network, he has this great story about you think about when you were a little kid and you're laying in bed, it's dark, you're in bed, you know that there's a monster under your bed, right? Like it's scary to step out. You know there's a monster under there. But the minute you're able to get brave enough to shine the flashlight down there, you realize, there's no monster, right? There's dust
Mhm.
bunnies. There might be other scary stuff under there, spiders, no monster. And so we talk about a lot about, okay, how you got to find the batteries. You got to put them in a flashlight. And how do we get that flashlight working to illuminate and take away some of that fear through education and data? And really having an understanding of what might this look like as best we can before you take that final leap into something new.
Yeah, just do the research really, because it's like anything. If you were researching a new job in the same industry, you'd probably
Right?
look up the company that you're going to go and have an
Yeah.
interview with. You'd look up the person that's running the company to kind of get a feel for what you could. At
Right.
least
Right.
typically that's what most people would do. So
And a
that
lot
makes
of us
complete
did
sense.
that, like, right out of school, had those
Mm-hmm.
informational interviews. We went and saw and studied, but then we got grown up
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't need to do that. And I'm like, no, 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 you still need to do that. Talk to
Yeah.
them. What does a day to day look like? What did they wish they knew when they were in your shoes?
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be, again, really thrilling. And you find those role models of like, okay, if she could do it, I could do this.
Yeah.
I could just see myself in this role.
Yeah. I think people also, one of the things that I always, well, I never really realized it until later on in my career. I realized that I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me, because
Yes.
if I don't feel it, like, I'm not going to want to work in a place where I just don't feel like there's a
Yeah.
connection. And I think that's really important. But I think a lot of people get scared because they think like, oh, I need this job. It's that scarcity about it. I need to have a job.
Yeah.
But then you end up in a place, in a space that you don't feel happy. So that's one of the things too that I want to ask you about, is like this
Mhm,
idea of freedom. So
mhm.
I think one of the things that keeps many of the high achieving women that listen to the podcast is that when they feel stuck, is that they want the freedom, but they're terrified of the uncertainty that comes with
Yeah.
it. The certainty, especially if you're changing industries, if you're becoming a business owner. So,
Mhm.
I know that part of what you've been able to do, and something I talk about and I believe is true, that it can be a reality. I have my own obvious take on it, but what does a balanced work life actually look like in practice? Because I think a lot of women have given up on believing that that's even real.
That's real. Well, again, what does that mean, right? My balance might look radically different than your balance. So some of that is defining for ourselves. What are you missing? Is it that I just want every Thursday afternoon to leave early enough to see Jimmy play at the T-ball game? Like, okay, that's one thing. Or is it I cannot go on another business trip or I'm gonna die. Like, I can't do it, So, I have had that feeling, right? When you're like, "Oh my god, if I have to go one more time, I'm going to combust." So, what is that balance look like? Like, how can we get really clear in a perfect world what would this look like? Okay. And sometimes it's a big change, but a lot of times it's like, "Oh, I just don't want them to call me on Saturdays." It's like,
Mhm.
"All right, we might be able to accomplish that in your current job." Like, like
Mhm.
that might not take a whole career shift. So I think getting really clear on that criteria for what makes a good opportunity for you, understanding that when you go into these interviews, so right? Am I hearing some red flags, some green flags? Where am I going to have to make some trade offs? What am I getting into? You're listening for all those things. Where I think a lot of times we just walk in from a place of scarcity, like, please pick me, please, please, please pick me. And it's like, okay, what if they do and you hate it and you're back at the same
Mhm.
place in 6 months or 12 months? We've all been there and it's like, oh, shoot, I should have asked some more questions or really, thought about this. So I think getting clear on the criteria that what makes a good opportunity, defining what is your balance look like? And that changes as our life changes. Right? Like, I might not wanna travel very much when my kids are little, but once they're out of the house, I don't sure, why not? Call me on a Saturday. What else am I doing? So, sometimes even defining it for this moment, the season that you're in, but then also knowing that you have options, right? That interview is not the only game in town. You could pick a lot of different things, a lot of different employers. You could go out on your own. You're not bound. And I think a lot of times that feeling of empowerment can make you very appealing to the people you're talking to, but also make you feel like, well, if this works out, awesome. If they check off my boxes, great. If they don't, I've got options. I can do other things. But that doesn't come without a little self-reflection, a little research, a little work, right? To put in to get there.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was also thinking about like what we kind of I think what we've been talking about really is being bold, taking bold action.
Yeah.
And as you know, this series is called Building an Extraordinary Life. And when you filled out your application form, you said that you were excited to talk about action steps to build one. So in your
Yeah.
experience coaching your clients through major career transitions, what do you think separates those who make bold moves and land well from those who stay stuck at the edge of it? And then what, in your opinion, are some action steps that someone could consider when they're transitioning from one thing to another?
Yeah, great, great. I think action is the thing that is different in those cases, because when we're afraid, we're immobilized, right? And we believe what people are telling us. Someone just told me this idea of you can't read the label of the bottle from inside the bottle. We're isolated, we're in fear. And the folks that can take some action, how do I find some help? How do I identify some resources? How do I get kind of outside myself a little bit, get some different voices in there? That often that's where the light bulbs start going off, right? That you can start readying yourself for lightning to strike, right? For luck to find you. And so I think that the action of really examining what are my goals? How do I define success? What would it look like for me to be successful? But then how do I start researching? How do I start vanquishing some of those fears and fighting some of that fear with some research and take some action? And when we say it, it's like, oh, that seems not so scary, right? Like you're not writing a check, you're not committing, you're not signing your name to anything, but it it's very bold. It's very courageous to do some self-examination and look kind of beyond your garden wall, right? To what else is out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, we're never going to know what we're capable of unless we actually just take the steps. Like, even if it's
Mhm.
the scariest thing you've ever done in your life. I know a lot of the times we've all done it, especially if you look back when you were a child. I'm sure there's moments in your childhood, even up maybe to your teens, that you did things that you were like, oh, yeah, I don't know if I would do that today, but you
Right?
did it. Right? You
Yeah.
did it, or you have 4 daughters, and I'm sure you saw your children doing
Yeah.
things you're like, "No, stop," trying to keep them safe. They were fearless. We were all
Mhm.
fearless one time, and I think it's being able to tap into that fearlessness that we used to embody, or still is in us, but
Mhm.
we've kind of, like, buried it a little bit because as we get older, obviously, and we go through life's experience and we go through all of
Yeah.
the things that happen, like you said, a lot of the time we stop questioning, we stop asking the questions, we stop
Mhm. Mhm.
realizing that we're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing us. I
Mhm.
think that's really important. And it's really, actually, I mean, if we think about it, it's one of the reasons why I have coffee chats with every guest before I have them on the show, is because I feel like, yes, I might be, checking to see if for me you're a good fit. I want you to be also to feel like, okay, is there a connection with me? And lastly, do I
Right.
feel like it would be a
Yeah.
good fit for me as well? So, and like, there's no hard feelings if it's not something that
It's
someone
not
would
a
want to
match.
explore. It's okay.
Mhm.
That's fine, because I would rather someone be honest and say, no, I don't feel like this is the direction of where I want my podcast experience to go. That's
Uh-huh.
fine. It's not a bad reflection of me. It just means it's their choice, and that's okay.
Mhm.
So I love that. Now I have a final question for you.
Okay.
So you're a career coach, you're a mom, and as I said, of 4 teenage daughters. And I have to say, oh my gosh, I bow to
Yeah,
you
pray for
because
me.
I have known people who, well, I have friends who have One, one mother told me like how her daughters would sneak out of the house, walking right past their door, ready to go partying at midnight. And there'd always be the one daughter would like shout enough or speak loud enough to say, "Hey, where are you going?" So that it would alert the parents, and
To
it
catch
would
'em.
just
Yeah.
it would just be funny. It's funny to me, but I also know that it's just a reality. Like they're learning, they're growing, they're trying to push the
Right.
boundaries and see what they can get away with. Obviously, I love the fact though you lead your community service through your church's food pantry, and I think it's always good to give back. I believe truly that you're clearly living what you teach is that balanced life, and what does that look like
Yeah.
for you and the things that you're doing. So, for the
Yeah.
women who are listening today,
Mhm.
um, my question for you is, what would you want them to walk away believing is possible for them, and what's one thing they can? Well, I guess really is what do you want them to walk away with believing what's possible for them, and but also what's something that they actually can start to
Can do.
ask themselves to start moving towards that life that maybe they keep putting off
Mhm.
because maybe
Mhm.
they don't feel like they're good enough, they don't feel like they're ready, they think they're too
Mhm.
old,
Mhm.
they think they're too young.
Mhm.
I mean, there's all of these excuses that we can give.
There's always an excuse to find, right? And I did have a client who she was right before she opened her business. We're having this talk and she's like, "I'm so scared." I'm like, "What exactly are you afraid of? What if I fail?" And I'm like, "Have you ever failed anything in your entire life? Have you flunked a class? No." I'm like, Have you failed at anything?" And she's like thinking and thinking, "Oh, there's this one project one time I was late." I'm like, that was a lot of thinking to come up with the one failure. So I think sometimes we live these highly successful lives. We've been successful. Our career is on a trajectory, but now we think, well, now I'm gonna fall off the cliff. And it's like, no, probably not. Like, probably not. You've been successful. You're gonna continue to be successful and figure it out, right? Like, that's who you are. So I think sometimes that first step of taking a minute. We use up all our strategizing energy on our teams and our families, taking a minute of that for yourself. What are my goals? Am I headed towards my success? Why am I feeling crummy about something or another? Like, what is that? How can we put words to it? I think is really the first action step. And it might be, I don't know. I need some help. I need to find some help, right? To figure that out. But I would encourage the listeners, if you're feeling that kind of itch of dissatisfaction or something is not exactly right, to not ignore it, to take a minute to interrogate that. What is that feeling about? Why am I so tired all the time? Why am I burnt out? Is there an environment that I wouldn't feel like this? How might I get there? How could I dream a little bit about that? And how can I find some resources to help me with where to start or how to look at this or what questions to ask? I think is a good first place, kind of naming it right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I think a lot of the time, yeah, we just kind of get in our own way. But again, with time passing, I think that's when we start. I don't know if it's our light starts to dim, but we start to accept things as they
Yeah.
are more so easily than we used to when we were younger. We used to push
Mhm,
back a little bit more when we were
mhm.
younger, but as we got older, it's almost like there was this almost like this unwritten rule. What the older you get, you can't push back.
Right,
And I
right. You
I
can't
go
be as
against stuff like that.
bold.
Yeah, you can't be as
Or
bold,
is
or
you
like
can't be a dreamer and pay
like
the bills.
be mature. But to me, being
Right?
mature
Grow
also
up.
comes, yeah, being mature doesn't mean that you don't still
Yeah,
question things,
yeah,
right? But I think that's
yeah.
where it falls off. So I could talk with you all day. I have really loved our
No,
conversation. I
me too.
really,
Me
really
too.
have loved it. Thank you. I loved that you have, come from that environment where you talk about being in the middle. It's like being in the middle, right? In HR,
Yeah.
realizing that, there has to be something more for you, which I really love that you found. I really love hearing how you have guided your clients into their career 2.0, understanding that career 1.0 isn't bad. It's just that maybe there's more
Yeah.
for you out there, and allowing yourself to have that courage and speak it out loud and find someone even like yourself to say, hey, this is what
Mhm.
I'm thinking. Have a sounding board. I always believe
Yeah.
having a sounding board, someone that you know that you can trust, that can just allow you to speak what you're thinking, I think is so important. Coaches
Mhm.
do that. That's what they do for a living. But I feel like even if you have your inner circle, people that you trust as well, that you can
Yeah.
bring these things to, I think is very
Yeah.
important. To me, community is like everything. I believe it's so
Mhm.
important. And I also know as women that we sometimes really need to be reminded that there are possibilities waiting for us. And I
Yeah.
feel that this conversation was so needed today. So thank you again so much for saying yes and spending
Uh,
time with me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, of course. Well, you reached out first and it was so great. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And to our listeners, if you would like to connect with Stacy directly and learn more about her work as a career ownership coach, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, you were never meant to shrink yourself to fit a career that was never designed with you in mind. You have the clarity, you have the strength, and you have everything you need to design the next chapter of your life on your own terms. And it's all within each and every one of you. Your career 2.0 isn't a backup plan. It's the boldest, most aligned, and most important move that you'll ever make. And you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to begin. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.